There is a magical sales tool that we all have, something that we've been taught ever since we were kids, a tool that our parents didn't realize could help us in our careers as sales reps, but they did share it with us. They were diligent about it, and we heard it every night. It was a story. Stories have a way of bringing the buyers into the situation, helping them to realize the true value. And if you're utilizing stories effectively, it could be a magical tool for you. And on today's episode, we're going to talk exactly about that, how you can utilize stories to your benefit. This episode today is brought to you in part by TSE Certified Sales Training Program. If you are a sales rep or you have a sales team and you're trying to figure out ways that you can help your team improve their skills, check out TSE Certified Sales Training Program. The first 2 modules are absolutely free, and it would be an honor to have you join. This episode is also brought to you in part by Audible. Take advantage of a 30-day free trial and also a free book of your choice. Simply go to audibletrial.com/TSE. Again, audibletrial.com/TSE. Hey, everyone. Welcome to another great episode of the Sales Evangelist Podcast. I'm your host, Donald Kelly, the Sales Evangelist. And I'm so excited for another great episode. I'm so excited to be here with you today. And on this episode, we have Mr. John Livesay, who is going to teach us the art of storytelling. Now, I know that you have learned about this before. You have read about it. You've tried it. And you utilize stories, but are your stories effective enough? Are your stories really capturing your buyer, pulling them in and making them want to go to the next step? If not, what John teaches today, you must apply. And if you apply it, you're going to see that it's actually magical when you can tell a story and really pull that buyer in that causes them to want to continue with you and not just beat you up on price. You're never going to go back. Listen to this episode, apply the concept, let us know what you think. Welcome to the show, John.
Thanks, Donald. Thanks for having me.
Oh, man, I'm super excited to have you. I know you're going to deliver some great value today on this episode. But before we dive into all the fun stuff and start talking about storytelling, why don't you tell us a little bit more about you and what you do, John?
Sure. I'm known as the pitch whisperer, and I help people become compelling storytellers. You know, Plato said stories rule the world, the people who tell the best stories. And it's just as true 2,600 years later as it was back then, except even Plato didn't have to compete against the internet and all the distractions that we have. So, you know, people typically bring me in to be a keynote speaker for sales teams because the old way of selling just doesn't work, which is where you push your message out. And the new way is to pull people in with great stories. And my journey on becoming a storyteller in sales started back when I worked at an advertising agency where we would take movies and have to edit them down into 30-second commercials. And you really had to tell a concise story that would make somebody want to go see that movie. Then I sold mainframe computers in Silicon Valley, and I had to compete against IBM and big companies like that. And you're selling something so technical. And I realized that if you confuse people, they say no, but a story of what the technology does is what pulls them in. And then finally, I really honed everything together at my career at 15 years selling advertising for Condé Nast publications. And that's really where you had to bring to life a vision of a particular brand to a particular advertiser so that they could see why their car or their fashion brand would resonate based on the stories that were being told in the magazine.
That is awesome. I love that idea. I love the concept that you first off, you started to explain to us that the old way is just gone out the window. And I find that is so true, especially right now. I saw I was talking to someone, if you look at even Instagram stories, the concept of stories are just so powerful. And people who are telling stories on Instagram with, the character, and we'll get into all of that. They're the ones who have this entertaining feed that people just keep going back to. And I think there's merit to that. So I was going to ask you why you're such a big passionate fan about story, but it seems like, you've seen it work over your years. Am I off on that?
Well, one of my big personal missions, Donald, is to help as many people as possible get off this self-esteem roller coaster In sales, we tend to only feel good about ourselves if our numbers are up and bad about ourselves if our numbers are down. And I was on that roller coaster myself. And I realized that part of what contributes to that is we feel like we have to push information out all the time. And that's exhausting. And you feel bad if you're pushing and trying so hard and you're not getting anything. And I just thought, when I tell stories, and the better storyteller I become and people can see themselves in the story, then I'm not pushing. I'm becoming magnetic. And people want to take my calls and open my emails. And it just became a whole new way of engaging with people because we're literally wired. It's in our DNA. We used to sit around the glow of campfires. And, now in meetings, we sit around the glow of PowerPoints. And hopefully they're interesting too.
And some of them, they're not, right?
Well, the kiss of death, yes. We can give a tip right off the get-go is do not read what's on your slide.
Oh, my goodness. Oh,
nobody wants to be read to. In fact, when I give a keynote, my slides are 90% images, and then I speak from the image, and people start, paying attention to what you're saying. So you have to know your material well enough. And there's a structure to what makes a good story. There's different genres of storytelling. So we can tap into any and all of that if you'd like.
Yeah. Well, let's start off to talk about why story work. Besides the fact that Plato said it, scientifically, why does it work? Why do we gravitate towards it as human beings?
Well, it has to do with that whole right brain, left brain kind of way we process information. If someone says to you, Donald, let me tell you about this car, how many miles per gallon it gets and this and that, you're like, oh boy, it's information. And you cross your arms and you're like, oh, I'm just negotiating on price. But if I say, Donald, let me tell you a story of someone who was just like you around the same age and they bought this car and how much better their life is now from the way they feel driving the car and how their confidence has gone up and they love taking clients out in this car and whatever it would be, then you're like, oh, you go from analyzing data to being pulled into a story. So the reason story works is we buy emotionally and then back it up with logic. So back to the car analogy, if you go in to buy a Ferrari, I promise you they're not saying it gets X number of miles per gallon. They're saying you're going to feel sexy and hot in this car. And it's going to be fun to drive. It's an emotional thing. And then back it up with, well, I guess I can, justify the cost.
Yeah.
So that's why storytelling works is because whether you're selling a home, a car, a computer, a design, if you're an architect, whatever it is, people buy emotionally and storytelling is the best way to get into people's emotions. I say, if you tug at people's heartstrings, they open their purse strings.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you on that one for sure. I think for going back to the Ferrari example, it's definitely not that gas mileage. And it's kind
of a Ferrari guy, so I use that for you, Donald.
Oh, there you go.
I saw your website, snappy dresser. I'm like, I bet he's, that or a Lamborghini or something.
Look at John over here telling us stories again. So we know they work in that sense, but let's bring it down to granular level. Now, a sales rep, let's say she's working at this tech company.
Okay.
She's trying to land more appointments, trying to get, good, let's say she's a BDR, so she's trying to get appointments. How could she utilize stories in her sales outreach?
Well, I spoke to 2 divisions of Honeywell over the last couple of years that sell tech products. And they were tending to get into the technology of how it works. And, they were building technical product that would go into the operating room of a hospital and keep the air clean. And they were getting into all the tech specs of how that worked and how it's better than the competition, the way that is designed. And I said, oh, we're missing the story here. What happens if the air is not clean in the operating room? Well, then the patient gets infected and has to be readmitted and has to have more surgery. And I'm like, that's the story to tell.
Yeah.
And they went, oh. So when I tell people the structure of a good story, and then they can see how they can take an existing case study, because every salesperson has a case study or a testimonial, right, Donald?
Yeah. And
there's 2 different ways to present that. You can present it with, here's an example of somebody we worked with and, like an architect, here's the before and after pictures of the airport we redesigned for them. What do you think? Here's the designs we have for you. There's nothing, there's no emotion, there's no story. It's just a bunch of facts. I mean, before and after pictures are great, but especially great if you have a story. So I said a good story has exposition. You paint a picture of who, what, where, when that this other client you worked with. What was the problem you were solving? And then what's life like for that client after you solve the problem? And the big aha here for people is you're not the hero in the story. Your client is. And you're the Sherpa, or like Yoda in Star Wars. And so when people can see themselves in the story of someone you helped who is just like them, then your closing becomes very different. You say, well, does that sound like the kind of journey you'd like to go on with us? Yes, I want that experience.
So taking those basic case studies, I could use that as I'm talking to someone on a phone, instead of just saying, we do blah, 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 tell that story about how I do that. And even some of my posts, maybe I can share, like go back to LinkedIn. What I love about LinkedIn right now, John, you can do those long form posts, which is a micro blog in a sense. And if you tell it, educate them with a story, like what you're saying, and give some good points, that's going to gravitate people towards you. And then I can open up a conversation after that, right? We message you if you comment on it.
Exactly. Well, going back to the airport example of renovating it. So instead of just saying, here's the before and after and here's what we do, the story was 4 years ago, we renovated the JetBlue terminal at JFK. And the problem was we had to rip up all the floors in the middle of the night and get it done so that the retail stores would open on time and not lose any revenue. And so we had vendors on call, and sure enough, at 2 a.m, a fuse blew, but we had somebody who could be there in 20 minutes to fix it. And at 8:59, the last tile went down, and at 9 o'clock, all the stores opened with completely renovated floors. And now JetBlue's gotten written up in the New York Times about how great that airport looks and how innovative it is. And it's gone from being ranked 24 to number 1 in 5 years. Does that sound like the kind of journey you'd like to go on? That's how they won the next airport renovation, because they painted that picture and told that case study in such a way that there was like specifics, there was a problem, there's a little bit of drama. And instead of just saying, we're somebody who, uses critical thinking to anticipate problems, I told you a story that showed that. Do you see the difference?
Hey, I know John is breaking this process down and giving you some great insights, but we're going to take a quick break. And when we get back, he's going to continue to share with you what you can do to structure your stories so that they can last, they can be effective, and your buyers will actually want to do business with you. You're listening to the Sales Evangelist podcast, and I'm your host, Donald Kelly, the Sales Evangelist. In my beginning efforts as a sales rep, man, it was tough. I was begging for money. I didn't know what I was doing, and I had a really difficult time. The company I was working with, well, they were smart enough to put me through some sales training, and then I saw a hockey stick in my performance. One of the cool things was each week we went to this group training program, and I was able to fortify my skills and improve, and next thing you know, I started to really do well. I figured whenever I have my own opportunity, I'll educate sales reps like that. So we created TSE Certified Sales Training Program. It's to help sellers of all levels. If you are trying to figure out what are the best strategies to find prospects, the first section will teach you that. If you know what to do to find the prospects, but you're having a difficult time crafting the right questions or getting them to say yes to your demonstration, well, we have a section devoted just to educate you on building value. Or even if you have an amazing way of finding the problem, but you're just not delivering it right, or perhaps you're just not getting them to say yes often enough, we have a section devoted just for closing. If you want to test it out for yourself, you can take advantage of the first 2 modules absolutely free. Go to thesalesevangelist.com/free course. Again, thesalesevangelist.com/free course. It would be an honor to have you and your team join. This episode is also brought to you in part by Audible. One of the cool things is that I dissect and devote my time to educating myself as a sales leader, as a business owner, and also as an individual. My wife and I are expecting our first little guy later this year, and one of our friends recommended Babywise. So I'm listening to that book. It's an amazing book, by the way. Besides talking about sales, I also love talking about space. So if there's anything I can learn about space, hey, I'll check that out. So there's a book I'm listening to as well called Beyond Earth. And of course, there are the sales education books. I have plenty of those in my arsenal. One of them I recommend you check out is Bob Burg's book, The Go-Giver. Now, you could take advantage of Audible. They are giving the TSE audience a free book of your choice. You can choose one of those or one of your own, absolutely free. And then they'll give you 30-day access to Audible. You can't beat that offer. I would recommend you go check it out. Go back to the show notes or simply go to audibletrial.com/TSE. Again, audibletrial.com/TSE. You're going to go on a whole new adventure now. Good stuff. Hey, we're back. And as we dive into the second half of this episode, John's going to continue the process of outlining what an effective story looks like and how you can apply that to see results starting today, not only in your emails and your phone calls, but in your LinkedIn and your Facebook and your social media communication, and even in your day-to-day life. Listen to what he has to say. Go back into what some of your clients, 90% of your clients, I'm throwing this out and this is probably not even your stat, but let's say people you first meet, how are their PowerPoints or their presentation? Let's say somebody like that who was going in and talking about the airport. What does that look like? Because I know some people are going to be like, oh, that's what we have now.
Yes. Well, unfortunately, the most common mistake on a PowerPoint slide is too many words.
Yeah.
And the other big mistake in a presentation is not thinking about what your opening is going to be. And when I work with clients, I say, what are you going to say when you're given an hour, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever it is, you're given some time to be in front of somebody, or what are you going to say? Well, we thought I would just say, thanks for this opportunity. I'm excited to be here. I'm like, oh my God. Okay. Anybody could say that. It's not memorable. And guess what? They're not excited that you're excited. It's not about you.
Yeah.
So the new opening became, your CEO has tasked you from getting this airport ranked to 20 to number 1 in 3 years. And we have just the team to do it. Oh, what's in it for me? Everybody's favorite radio station, WIFFM. You just said you had an opening that pulled me in.
Yeah.
The other big mistake I see people making is on their team slide, which is the most important slide of any presentation, whether you're pitching to get your startup funded, pitching to get hired, pitching to just tell people why they want to work with you versus another team. Yeah. And they typically will just say, hi, my name is Bob. I've been here 10 years. Sue goes, I've been here 5 years. This is what I do. Oh, so I work with them and I pull out the individual stories. So with Bob, what made you become an architect? And he tells me. So now when Bob turns to talk, he says, when I was 11 years old, I used to play with Legos. That's what inspired me to become an architect. Now I have a son that's 11. I still play with Legos. I bring that same passion I had as a kid to every job I work on. Now meet Sue. Sue said, before working here, I was in the Israeli army. And I bring that same discipline and focus to make sure this project's going to come on time and under budget. Guess who they hired? The people that told the story, because we connect to people's personal stories of origin.
Yeah. That is really cool there. I really like the idea there from, what you're sharing, that we give them a little bit about who we are. And the human side of that, John, I think that's what makes that super good connection, right? That I'm like, oh man, dude, I used to play with Legos too as a kid. That's cool. Mm-hmm. As opposed to, this is the architect on the team. Oh, he looks so boring. He's going to talk, boring talk. But like, dang.
Yes. And that's what makes you memorable, because the other big problem I saw for my clients, it's typically between, they call it a shootout or a bake-off or whatever you want to do it. And I did this in media. They say, okay, all the brands come in and pitch Lexus and, one after another. And that all starts to blur together. And you think, what can I say that's going to make me memorable? And then people start asking, hey, can I be last in presenting, thinking that'll make me memorable? It'll be easier for you to remember me if I'm last. And I said, whoever tells the best story is going to get the sale. So it doesn't matter what order you go in. And that was the aha moment for a lot of my clients to say, we need to have you come in and teach our salespeople how to be keynote speakers, teach our salespeople how to be storytellers in your keynote. So
we're getting on so many good things here. And you kind of went over this a little bit, but I want to take some time and really pull it into, break the science behind it. What are the elements of an effective story? And then maybe we can do an example.
Sure. No, I have one ready to go.
Look at this.
What a surprise. Before we jump into what makes a good story, I did want to touch on something you said that was so important, which is you're selling yourself first.
Ooh.
And then you sell the company, and then you sell your product or service. And Donald, most people skip the first two. So if people can remember, I need to sell myself. You're selling yourself by telling a story about yourself. Then I'm going to tell the story of the company, how we started, what we stand for, what our culture is. And then I'm going to tell the story of how we help somebody else. Mm-hmm. So there's lots of different ways to use stories in that structure, yourself, the company, and then the product. So what makes a good story? Here's an example of one. One of my clients' name is Martin, and he was getting ready to pitch his startup to get some funding. And I have an exercise where I help people with their confidence, because people get nervous when they have to get up in front of people to pitch or sell themselves.
Yeah.
I said, write down 2 or 3 times when you knew you nailed something. And we're going to have that in your mind before you get up in front of the investors. And he said, well, for me, the big one that sticks out is remembering that, I was born in South America, but I grew up in the Netherlands. And when I turned 18, my parents took me back to South America and dropped me off naked in the Amazon jungle to survive for 2 weeks. Because of my culture, that's the rite of passage into manhood. Dang. I said, that gives me chills. I said, okay, let's work on that story. What lessons did you learn in the Amazon jungle? Well, I learned how to focus and pivot and persevere. I said, great. I'm going to take those lessons from the Amazon jungle into the concrete jungle of being an entrepreneur. And when he had that pitch down, he got funded because the investors said to themselves, we're going to put our money on the guy that survived the Amazon jungle. He'll figure out anything else. So that's a good story, right? So why is that a good story? What is the science behind what makes it a good story? The element, exposition. Martin, 18 years old, right? I said, if you don't say that it's a rite of passage in your culture, it sounds like child abuse. So exposition is important to paint that picture so people feel like they're in the story. The problem, clearly, he's naked for 2 weeks. The solution is he learns some life lessons about focus and pivot and persevere. And then here's the secret sauce, the exposition. What's life? The resolution of all that now is his life is great. He got his startup funded because he told that great story. So the resolution following the exposition, problem, and solution will be the secret to making all your stories that much better. So don't just tell the story of how you helped a client and you give the specifics of how long ago it was and what problem you solved. Paint that picture of the resolution. What is life like for that client now that they've hired you or bought your product? Or they need to see a year from now how great their life is so that they can see themselves future paced into that story. That's why it works scientifically.
Interesting. Yeah, because now I'm a part of it. And I just imagine what that presentation would have been like. This is what we're looking for. This is why I'm so passionate about, hand sock puppets or whatever they're pitching. And this is how much our cost is. Mm. And I think if you look at that in a sales sense, when sales reps get into these discussions with buyers and they tell them, this is how much our product is and this is how much it costs and this is why we're better than the competition, that doesn't tell me anything. Like you're saying, the story is where the money is.
Yes. It's what makes you memorable. It connects emotionally, which is how we buy first. And it allows you to have a tool in your toolbox that you don't normally have.
I'm starting in this new position. I am the sales rep, or let's say I've been with a company for a while. I'm a senior account executive, but I've done well, okay, but now it's getting so much more competitive and I'm trying to get to that next level. I listen to this podcast episode and I get done. What's the very first thing I should do to start implementing this stuff?
The first thing you should do if you're starting a new job is those 3 things. What am I going to say that's going to sell myself? What's my story? Why did I take this job? Why am I so passionate about this? Second, what's the company's story that I can have down that distinguishes us from everybody else? What's our story of origin? And then finally, what's a case study that I can turn into a story that people are going to want to see themselves in so that I don't have to push so hard to get them to say, yes, the story will pull them in.
So we got some simple little stuff that we can do there. If there's one major piece of advice you want folks who are listening to this episode to walk away with today, John, what's that major piece of advice?
The biggest piece of advice I would say came from Arthur Ashe, the famous tennis pro. Mm-hmm. The key to success is confidence, and the key to confidence is preparation.
Dude, that's so golden. No more winging it. No more winging it.
Mm-hmm.
Love it, man. Now, if folks out there want to get access to your book, do you mind talking to me about the book for a second?
Happy to. Yes, it's called Better Selling Through Storytelling. It's on Audible and Kindle and all the other good places and ways you can buy a book. In fact, if your audience texts the word pitch, P-I-T-C-H, to 66866, I'll email them a free chapter, sneak peek of it. It has a step-by-step process on not only how to be a good storyteller, but how to go from invisible to irresistible when you're in a sales process.
Love that, man. So go from invisible to irresistible.
Yes.
All right, guys, you heard that. I know you all are out there trying to do that thing. So you need to make sure you listen and take advantage of this stuff. But we'll go ahead and put that in our show notes so folks can get access to it, man. But John, you gave some great wisdom here, man. Thank you so much. I super appreciate your time and your willingness to come and share your craft.
Thanks for having me, Donald.
It was an absolute honor. I'm telling you, John came, he saw, he delivered. Did I not tell you that storytelling is magical? It could be magical for you. It could be that sales tool that you're sleeping on, which could turn around your quarter. I know probably some of you didn't have a best Q2, but right now we could change that. And I want you guys to think how you're telling your stories. If you're telling them, are you following the process that John shared? And if you are not, go back, listen to this, connect with John on LinkedIn, or you can find him on social media. He has some amazing stuff. He actually has a TEDx video, I believe he did, and it was like over 1 million views. So dude is well known in his industry, brings a lot of value, packs a lot of punch, and definitely I want him to be in your connection. Go ahead and reach out to him. Let him know you heard him on the Sales Evangelist podcast. While you're going back to our show notes as well, I want you guys to check out our program, TSE Certified Sales Training Program. It would be an absolute honor to have you join us. You can jump in anytime and go through the semester, or if you want to take it to the next level and get some guidance and go through it with a group, you can join our group coaching program. It would be an absolute honor to have you join us. Also, make sure to check out Audible. Take advantage of the free book. Audible will give you 1 free book and a 30-day free trial. Can't beat that. If you want to check out a great book, I recommend you check out Bob Burg's book, The Go-Giver. It's a series and it's just remarkable. Find all the details again back in our show notes. I share this with you because I want to help you. I bring folks on like John because I know they can deliver value. I want you to find more ideal customers. I want you to build stronger value with your prospects, with your potential buyers, with your clients, with your family. And I want you to close more deals. But most importantly, it's to challenge you to go out each and every single day and do big things. Hey, I want to tell you thank you so much for taking the time to listen to our podcast, for subscribing, for telling your friends, your neighbors, your colleagues about the show. It goes a long way, and I truly appreciate it. If you haven't done so already, I ask you to leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you listen to fine podcasts. It would be greatly appreciated. Our show today was produced by myself and the Sales Podcast Network. It was edited and mixed together by the one and only Mr. Jershon O'Bale. Our content writer and show note creator is Mrs. Shannon Rasmussen. You can find audio credits to this and all of our episodes in each of our show notes. And as always, I am your host, your coach, your mentor, your guide down the sales journey, Mr. Donald C. Kelly, the Sales Evangelist. Sales Podcast Network.